So it goes without saying that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in a very interesting spot right now. And we're about a week removed from the Echo TV show coming out. And because of scheduling and whatnot, work and whatnot, real life and whatnot, I've been a little bit tied up and preoccupied. But now here I am. More of a free man now that the holiday season is over and work uh, isn't so taxing on me. And so now I have time to do the things that are really important, and that is talk about comic books and superhero and the such. You know, the things that really matter in life. And I had been actually oddly curious about this Echo TV show for a while. If you guys remember back when it was announced, there were it was a lot of interesting notions, right? Because this was at a time when the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to a degree, they still had this air of superiority about them, right? Like they still moved and behaved like they were untouchable, like fans would eat up and consume whatever they put out. And I remember when they announced a set of TV shows they had coming out, and this was after the first wave of TV shows we had gotten. So like this was after we had gotten, Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision and Loki and maybe one other one, but Hawkeye obviously. And at that point with with that first slate of TV shows, it became kind of clear that the budget might be there. These may be multi-million dollar projects that they're filming and releasing, but the quality isn't quite what any of us expected or wanted, right? We all kind of wanted something that was going to be, you know, like classic MCU, but segmented into TV format, so that we can get more in depth, fleshed out stories, and things are going to be more drawn out in an interesting manner. Things would be allowed to breathe more, and we'd be able to live with some of these characters and scenarios and stories a little bit longer. And instead, what we got was what we got. And we've discussed that to a lengthy degree, so I will not go into that here and now. But instead, what I want to say is for all you homies out there, thank you guys for listening, and welcome to another very special episode of the Superhero Homies podcast. My name is Quentin, and today I'm flying solo, but don't worry because I'm here to talk about Echo. I'm a poet. I had a little bit of an epiphany when I was gearing up for the Echo review because, admittedly, over the years, I'd kind of fallen into the habit of just reviewing, bulk reviewing, basically, right? Where I would watch the entirety of a TV show and then just talk about it in tandem, talk about the whole thing. But I figured for something that's only 5 episodes, and for something that is kind of I don't want to overblow this show and make it seem like it's more important than it is, but at the same time, I don't know how much more grace fans, casual or not, have for the MCU. And so, in that regard, this show is kind of an important thing because people are wanting something more from the MCU. So, in that regard, this show is very important. And, I just figured, you know what, why not? Watch an episode, review an episode. And so for the next 5 days, you guys will be getting an episode from me. I hesitantly call these shorties. We shall see, because as I have discovered, even when I'm by myself, I can still be extremely long-winded. But hey, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? So we'll go ahead and get into this, guys. Echo episode 1. Actually, pause that. So before we actually get into this episode, there are a few other things to discuss here, just about the format and about the kind of their take on the character of Echo. So as I was watching this show, and you get flashbacks of the scenes from the Hawkeye TV show that feature Maya, and you get an idea of the take that they're going for with this character. And usually with these type things, I talk about the character from the comic book roots, their origin story, the power sets, where they made their first appearance, what they're known for, what they can do. But I figure for this one, I'm just gonna add that on to another episode at the end of the season finale review that I do. So basically, yeah, I'm just gonna do an episode. This will be similar to when I reviewed the Flashpoint story after the Flash movie came out, because there were so many differences that it just felt necessary to do. And so this is gonna be similar to that. I'll be reviewing that story. And this is also just gives me an opportunity to reread a really good story. Because I haven't read that story in probably the better part of 3 years, and that's not an extremely long time, but it's long enough for a lot of things to slip through the cracks. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I believe it's just a 5 or 6 part miniseries, so it'll be a brief read. And if you guys wanted to read that, the best way to do it is in the Marvel Knights omnibus. It's called Marvel Knights, but essentially it's Daredevil. Like I had that omnibus filed in with the rest of the Daredevil books, and I've never really been sure why they just called it Marvel Knights when they could have at least called it like Daredevil Marvel Knights. I don't know. But I look forward to talking to you guys about that. It is a really good read. There's some really good stories in there. Joe Quesada, who during the making of those stories became editor in chief of Marvel Comics at that time, he was the main one, either writing or penciling, and maybe sometimes a little bit of both. And the story with Echo, actually, I forget the name of it. I'll definitely have that ready in a few days when I review it again. But yeah, he was doing a lot of really good work for Marvel at that time. But the reason I bring up the whole Marvel Knights thing is because I'm curious as to if the MCU would ever think of kind of adapting that nature. You know what I mean? So Marvel Knights was a brand of comic books that was released in like the late '90s, and it was similar to like the Marvel Max series. The Max series were like a series of really kind of explicit books. So, like Garth Ennis's Punisher, that was a Marvel Max book. Brian Michael Bendis' Alias with Jessica Jones, that was a Marvel Max series. And those books were, again, they were just kind of more explicit in nature, more mature in nature. Marvel Knights is kind of the same thing as that, except unlike the Punisher books that were under the Max logo, Marvel Knights is all canon, so it's all tied into the main 616 Marvel Comics universe. And with the recent notion of the Netflix series all being brought into the fold and all being stated as canon, as far as I can tell, it's all now considered canonical, which is really bizarre, right? Because it puts those TV shows in kind of an interesting space. And it puts everything into kind of an interesting space because they've always kind of felt a little bit separate from each other. Like it's really hard to envision that the same time that Ultron was attacking Sokovia and whatnot, that none of that shit ever ever bothered anyone in New York. Or hell, I mean, we can talk about the Battle of New York. They made a few references to the Battle of New York in some of the Marvel Netflix TV series, but I mean, not a lot. I mean, they just kind of brushed that shit off. I remember in Luke Cage season 1, the place where the big bad, God, I forget his name. He was kind of a shitty villain. Not Mahershala Ali, that was Cottonmouth, and he was amazing. But like the actual main villain for season 1 of Luke Cage, he had this power suit that it was broadly stated that he got it from Justin Hammer, uh, which had me surprised that the suit lasted that long. Anywho, it'd just be interesting if they were to make a different section of like Disney Plus for their Marvel series for the more mature rated stuff and just file that under Marvel Knights, especially since right now everything that would go in that category essentially would definitely fit what Marvel Knights represented. It was more of a crime ridden boots on ground approach to comic books. So it was a lot of Daredevil, you know what I mean? A lot of it really felt like the Defenderverse basically. And so since the MCU now has and is utilizing the Defenderverse, I'm like, yeah, why not? Why not just call it Marvel Knights? Anywho, enough of that rambling. I know you guys are here to hear. Uh, you guys are here to hear about some Echo, and yeah, and so I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys my thoughts, the review and breakdown of this, and yeah, and then we'll go ahead and get out of here until tomorrow, where I watch and review episode 2. So yeah, as of this recording, guys, I've only seen one episode. That is just the first, which is titled Chafa. So now we'll go ahead and get into this breakdown properly. All right, so when I first started up this TV show and we get this opening scene, I admittedly was a little baffled. I was befuddled. I had no idea what was going on, and it was to the point where I actually paused just to make sure that I was watching the correct show. And once I confirmed that this is in fact the Echo TV show, I resumed watching. And I'm not saying that as anything negative. It was just it caught me so off guard, and I had no idea what was going on until we got the following scene. So let me know if some of you guys feel the same way, because for me it was a little off-putting at first until I finally got the context of what was going on. And surely some of this has to come back in some kind of manner. Otherwise, I'd be left wondering what was the point of this opening scene. But there's some kind of, it looks like some kind of a ritualistic scene going on here, where we see a bunch of people. They look to be in like some kind of underground cavernous place, and there's this kind of weird, extremely blue, beautiful looking water from like a almost like a geyser like area, and they're drinking from this water. It's not geyser water, obviously. That shit would boil people alive, but it just looks like it's contained in something of a sort. And they're drinking this water, and there's a real supernatural aspect to these people, right? Like glowing eyes and a really uniquely textured skin and markings. And so you're kind of wondering, okay, what in the world is going on here? And then there's apparently like some kind of earthquake or cave in, where like the roof of the top, or the top of the cave, starts to drop down on the people. And again, apparently there is some sort of supernatural aspect to these people, because some of them, even though they're straining, are able to kind of hold up the roof of this cave for a while. And then everything kind of goes black, and when we come to, there's this lady standing in a field outside in the open space, green grass all around, and it's almost like the I don't know, like the skin over her, or whatever was covering their skin, begins to flake and fall off. And yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what was going on there, but again, I'm assuming that there will be some other information given here about this. But then this is where we kind of zoom away from this scene, and we go into the following scene, where we see two kids out in the tent, two little girls, and one of them you can easily identify as little Maya, because that kid looks so much like Alekwa Cox, the actress who plays Maya Lopez. This little girl looks so much like her, so it was unmistakable who she was supposed to be. And but you quickly realize that is a very young Maya talking to her cousin, and they have a really close bond. Maya considers her a sister, and then this is where they say that the woman who we were focused on in that opening scene. Her name was Chafa, and she saved her family from the cave. And apparently that was like the beginning of that particular tribe of Native Americans. A really interesting tale, but you have to wonder if they purposely left some details out just for a later reveal. I'm assuming so. Because yeah, I mean, hell, like if you're gonna tell me the story, tell me the whole damn story. Like, what's going on here? Give me the deets. But it was a really unique and interesting way to open up the show, one that I would not have thought of or conceived. And again, not saying that it's a bad thing, but I do have to wonder where this ties into the greater aspects of this TV show. But we see that little Maya and her cousin, her name is Bonnie. Those two are like the bestest of best friends. Also, we quickly realize that this scene right here is now taking place in 2007. And boy, I feel old as shit. I was like 19 in 2007. Holy shit. Was it really that long ago? Ugh, anywho, yeah, so I have written down here in my notes even. Little Maya looks identical to adult Maya, just tiny. And she does. I thought that shit was uncanny. And they are in Tacoma, Oklahoma. I think that's where they said they were at. Something like that. They're definitely in Oklahoma. Uh, and we see that there's like the adults, two sets of adults are not far from where the kids are camping out at, and they're just kind of talking, shooting the shit, doing things that adults do usually at these get-togethers, minus the drinking. I didn't see any alcohol at this setting, but eventually, one set of adults leave, and then the other set go back into the house, and it starts to rain, and they wonder if the kids are gonna come in because it's raining. They clearly not gonna stay outside in that little tent. Uh, and they do come back inside, and little Maya, she signs to her mom that, hey, look, we need some hot chocolate. We need some hot chocolate in this bitch. It's raining outside. I'm cold as fuck. Where the fuck is my hot chocolate? That's a direct translation according to Disney Plus. I don't know why they put that in the show. I didn't write it. They did. Anywho, little Maya and her mom, they then get inside the inside one of their vehicles, and they began riding off into town in pursuit of said hot chocolate. Except there's a problem here. It's raining really, really hard. That's problem number one. Problem number two is the brake line has been cut. We soon figure that out. But at this moment, we just know that the brakes aren't working. So that's problem number two. The brakes aren't working. And problem number three, this is an origin story in a superhero-based TV show, which means tragedy must ensue. And that's really the biggest problem here. All right. If you ever find yourself in the origin story of a superhero-based story, then don't panic. All right. No need to panic. Just take a deep breath and be honest with yourself. Are you the protagonist? Are you the one who's going to grow up to be the superhero, or are you a relative of the superhero? Because if you're the relative of the superhero, especially if you're a parent, you're going to be fucked. All right. I'm just going to lay it out there for you. You're going to be fucked, all right? If you are the protagonist, you'll be fine. There'll be a lot of emotional trauma. But after years of beating the shit out of villains, you won't get over it. But, I mean, beating the shit out of villains will make you temporarily feel better. And if you are the relative of the protagonist, if you're like a brother or a friend or a cousin, you might be fine, or you might die. It's a 50-50 chance with that one. Anywho, enough of the jokes here. Yeah. So yeah, those are problems though with superhero contents. Like, it sucks to go through an origin story because that's just not going to end well completely. Unless you're like Miss Marvel, and your origin is you're a fangirl, and then there's just nothing at stake. But enough stray bullets being thrown around here. So yeah, Maya is with her mom in the truck, and it's raining really hard, and the brakes don't work, and so they can't stop, and they are T-boned by a truck. When Maya comes to, her leg has been impaled by, it looks like a shard of glass or metal, and it looks rough. And Maya's mom is clearly deceased. Looks like those wounds will not be healing on Maya's mom. She is no Wolverine. And yeah, so that was a very kind of brief yet tense scene that we got there. Very, very tense. And so, I mean, and this episode, by the way, just moves right along. I don't know if the rest of the series will keep this pace, but episode one had a tremendous pace. And I'm not saying that everything should move so quickly, but this episode had to do a lot, and it had a lot of ground. It had a lot of ground to cover. And the episode as a whole was around 52 minutes or so, 54 minutes, but there were about 7 minutes of credits. So, it was like in the 45-minute range in total, and they had a lot of ground to cover. And so the pacing for this episode was just really kind of breakneck. Again, I didn't mind it. It worked really well for this first episode, but I do wonder how this show will sustain itself in the later episodes. When it's time for character moments and time for things to breathe and time for stories to develop, I wonder how the show will continue to kind of pace itself. But Maya, she is now in the hospital, and there's some static between the parents of Maya's mom and Maya's father. If memory serves correctly, in the comic books, her father was a man who had the nickname Crazy Horse. I forget what they call him here in the show. Anyway, it's not that important because he's going to die in just a few scenes. So what you also quickly come to learn here is that this episode probably 85% of this episode is origin story and setup. Scratch that. 85% of the episode is setup. I mean, it's origin story, and then like the last 30 seconds is setup. It's where we really realize why we're here. So moving on here with the origin story, Maya had to have her leg amputated because of the crash, and the father, he hadn't worked up the strength yet to tell Maya that her mom had been killed in the crash. It's because that would really 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 suck to tell. Tough situation there. What are you gonna do? You gotta rip that shit off like a bandage, maybe. You gotta walk in there, and you gotta be like, hey, look, Maya, sorry about your leg, and hey, I got you some hot chocolate because clearly you didn't get any in the car wreck. And hey, look, we're gonna put on your favorite TV show. Don't know if you play video games. Got you a PlayStation. We're gonna have a blast. Your mom is dead. We're gonna go get you some McDonald's. It's gonna be a great time. You got to reveal it like that. But unfortunately, Maya's father didn't. He's not the type of father that I would be. Unfortunately for Maya, so he didn't have the ideas that I have. So. Yeah, so anywho, we go through this, and Maya, she eventually leaves Oklahoma with her father. Her father picked up a job in New York, and okay, when it comes to, again, we got to go back to comic book logic here, all right? So bear with me. Remember how I said, like, a superhero origin story, at least a good one, there's going to be some tragedy, all right? You know what I mean? Always going to be tragedy. And if you live in like Marvel's New York or DC's Gotham City, if you choose to move there, you are either a police officer or you into some shady shit. All right. Those are the only two options there. No one just moves there All right, living a good, quiet, and peaceful life. You're going there because you're either trying to commit some crime or stop some crime. And guess which one's Maya's dad is? That's right. He is in the crime committing business. And admittedly, we don't really get to see a lot of what he's doing there. It did remind me a little bit of good old battling Jack Murdoch, Daredevil's dad. But as we'll talk about in a couple of days here, when you see or when you read Maya's origin in the comic books, it is kind of made to mirror Matt in so many ways. It was a way for those two characters to kind of bond. But anyway, we see that Maya, she's taking self defense classes and she's learning how to defend herself. And she's saying things like she wants to be like her father, but she's able to see him do some shady shit. Now, admittedly, again, all we see is him hand off an envelope to someone else. And I mean, we don't know what's in the envelope. It could be there could be like his famous stamp collection in that envelope. He's like, I'm trusting you with this. All right, go get it appraised. Don't do anything crazy. But if we're being as honest as we can be, chances are that was a financial transaction that included money from unspeakable crimes, maybe thievery, extortion, worse, who knows. But what we do know is that Kingpin shows up. He comes to visit. And he, for one reason or another, takes a liking to little Maya. Uh, yeah, also, if you ever meet anyone named Kingpin, that's never a good thing. I'm giving you guys the red flags to watch out for if you ever wake up in a comic book story. All right, there are certain do's and don'ts. Matter of fact, the best case scenario is if you're just a background character in one of the panels. That's best case scenario. All right, so we move on here, and we see Maya. She is now the adult Maya that we know for the most part, and she is uh, about to enter into, I think, the same gym where she's been training at for years at this point. We see that she's, kind of a legit badass fucking killer at this point now, ass beater at least. And she sees Ronan inside killing all kinds of people, including her father. And again, man, hey, listen, those goddamn origin stories, man. As long as you're in that origin story phase, it's gonna be some nasty shit. All right. And for those of you who don't remember, Ronan was featured in both the Hawkeye TV show and in Avengers Endgame, and that is a very interesting character. Don't want to get too far into that here. Don't want to get too lost in the weeds on the identity of Ronan. The MCU keeps it simple and sweet, and it's just Clint Barton, Hawkeye, who is Ronan. And that was the identity he took up in Endgame after his family had been snapped away, and dealing with crime syndicates in the most brutal and murderous of fashions was kind of his only way of coping with his loss. And I really like what they did with Ronan in the MCU. I also like Ronan in the comic books as well. Now, the interesting thing about Ronan, not Ronan the Accuser, that's Ronan, but Ronan like Ronin. Ronan in the comic books was actually a little bit of a red herring because fans figured it out too soon. So they had to kind of shift gears and change the person under the mask. So in the comic books, yes, it was originally going to be Clint Barton, and then eventually later on it was Clint Barton. But originally, when the Ronin character was first introduced, fans quickly pieced together, oh, I think that this is going to be Hawkeye. And Marvel was like, oh, well, fuck. And so they pivoted, and then they changed it to actually, I believe it was Echo, who ended up being the first Ronin. And so it's a very interesting turn of events to see how that played out. And then, like I said, eventually it would be Hawkeye who would take up the Ronin mantle. And I've often wondered, since the Hawkeye TV show, would they ever try to do any kind of correlation with that? Is Echo going to end up in the Ronin get up sometime? I suppose only time will tell. Anyway, she sees Ronan kicking ass and doing it in a very cool and stylish fashion. That Ronin suit looks really cool. And oh yeah, unfortunately her dad is dead. So there's that. And when the dad dies, he leaves that bloody handprint on her face. And for those of you who have read Echo in the comic books, you know that she's kind of known for having that handprint on the side of her face. So that was kind of a wink and a nod to the comic book community. The next thing we get here is she goes to, well, she doesn't go to Kingpin. She starts doing a bunch of stupid, reckless crimes because she's hurt and she's angry, and like she like throws a fucking motorcycle at a police car, and they're not very happy about that. The police are upset, maybe understandably so. Uh, she's not black, so they don't shoot her on sight. But instead, Kingpin does show up, and when he shows up, for the most part, everyone steps aside except for one fucking rookie cop. There's always that one dumbass rookie who doesn't know his ass from his badge, right? Like he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And then thankfully there's an elder statesman cop who tells him to shut the fuck up, get out of the way. That's the Kingpin. And Kingpin, I mean, with saying nothing to these police officers, gets Maya out of custody, takes her into his luxury vehicle, limo, whatever you want to call it. And with his translator there, he begins to talk with Maya, saying that he's worried about her and she's going down this dangerous path, and he knows how she feels, all the rage and whatnot. And then he essentially offers her an outlet for that rage. And so now Maya is working with some of the Kingpin's goons, and his goons are going to do like this kind of sting operation. Long story short, Maya and two of the Kingpin's other goons, they go to this place to appear to play friendly with these other criminals, but they're not. And the goons start killing and beating the shit out of these other crime people, presumably just extorting them for money, kind of the Kingpin special. And Maya is a little shell shocked at first at all the murder and chaos and mayhem until she's attacked by one of the opposing goons, and she grabs that person, snaps his fucking neck. Actually, the subtitles say that she snapped his spine, which is much more impressive. But then again, of course, obviously the neck bone's connected to the spine bone. That's how the song goes. So all the same. Anywho, but once she kills that first person, she's like, "Oh yeah, this is fucking amazing," and so now she's in it. And I guess the whole point of Kingpin sending her on this, I don't want to call it a dummy mission because she did have two of his goons with her, but the whole point of this mission was kind of twofold. One was because if you want to believe the Kingpin is any type of a good person, then one part of this dummy mission was he wanted her to actually have an outlet to get her rage out. But the other part of him sending her on this dummy mission, and probably the more truthful matter, is he wanted to see if she had that dog in her. He wanted to see if she could be a usable asset to his empire. Her dad was apparently was a really good tool in Kingpin's arsenal, and the dad is gone. So is the daughter going to be of any use to me? Now, I like that the show doesn't explicitly say that, at least not in episode one. And hopefully they don't, you know what I mean? We all know what the Kingpin is like. We all know what he's about. And not everything has to be spelled out. So I would like it if they just keep some things kind of ambiguous like that. Because there are times where it seems that the Kingpin does actually care about Maya. But we all know that he uses people. He manipulates people. As a matter of fact, they do say that in the Hawkeye TV show, and they play that scene again at a later point here in this episode. But of course, I'm not going to skip over what's probably most people's favorite part of this episode, and that is the Daredevil sighting. So as the goons of Kingpin and Maya are, beating the shit out of and or killing these other random hench people, and I love the way that this was shot. Daredevil, because Daredevil's not in frame, but you see him come into frame, in like the top corner of the screen. And then we get a really cool fight scene. And I want to take a pause here for a second because I've heard people talk about this show, and I've heard people talk about this scene actually in particular. And there's a lot of people out there who didn't like this scene, and that kind of surprised me. I'm a fight scene junkie. I love a good fight scene. I love analyzing fight scenes. I love when stories are being told without words, and you see the story break down via action. And I love when you see what a character can do, and when the fight choreographer and the people writing the show really understand a character's skill sets. And you see that all play out in this beautiful ballet. I'm not saying that this is like the most excellent, well done Daredevil fight scene. I mean, listen, it's not. It's going to be really hard to top what the Netflix team did. But I'm not looking for this TV show to outdo those first three seasons of Daredevil. Okay. I think in that regard, some people just needed to taper their expectations. And I think for some other people, this show is going to be damned if it does and damned if it didn't. Simply because with the whole Daredevil and Kingpin thing, right? If you don't put them in this TV show, then people are going to be really upset, myself included, because how are you going to make a TV show about this character whose origin is linked directly to both Kingpin and Daredevil? So you have to have them in it. On the other hand, you cannot have the TV show be about Kingpin and Daredevil, even though that may be what people want to see. That cannot be what this show is about. It's Echo's show, so it still has to center around Echo, right? And then the other thing here is you gotta taper your expectations. If you wanted this fight scene to be this fucking thing where it's just superior to anything you've seen in the Netflix Daredevil TV show, then you're setting yourself up for failure. You're not going to get what you want. But instead, what we get here was a very, very well done, very well crafted fight scene here. And what I really dug about it is again, like, this was to me worlds better than his appearance in the She-Hulk TV show. They perfectly blended the more supernatural aspect of Matt Murdock versus the grounded boxer version of Matt Murdock, both of which are obviously, canonical versions of the character in the comic books. And so they perfectly took like the superhero-esque of Matt Murdock and, like the more gritty, grounded Netflix version of Matt Murdock, and they combined that into one Daredevil, and you get to see him utilize all those skills in this fight scene. And you also get to see that, again, they don't explicitly tell you this, but if you're watching, then you understand. Matt's holding back, right? He's even talking with Maya about how he's been following her and he's been watching her, like this whole sting operation going down. And it's just an excellent fight scene. It's 3-on-1, and Matt gets the better of everybody. But he doesn't, he doesn't go for any. He doesn't kill people. I was gonna say he doesn't go for any killing blows. Uh, all the criminals would be having a real rough fucking time if he did. Uh, but he doesn't. I guess it does kind of end in like a stalemate because he doesn't. I guess he just kind of leaves. Do I have a problem with that? I might have a problem with that. What the fuck does he do at the end of this fight scene? Like, why does he stop? Huh. I'm going to go back and rewatch that, and I'll touch on that again when I review episode 2 tomorrow. Anyway, it was a very well done fight scene, though. Like, you could tell that they were trying to, pay homage to and maybe kind of replicate the recipe that made the fight scenes on the Netflix series so good. But they put their own spin on it. And I appreciate that. And that's what you have to do, right? Like, people expect a certain level of quality from a Daredevil fight scene. And again, at the same time, you can't just copy and paste. You have to put your own spin on it. and that's what they did here. I love the use of the Billy Clubs now because we never really got to see Matt use the Billy Clubs like that in the Daredevil series on Netflix. Anyways, a very excellent fight scene here. Afterwards, Kingpin is talking with Maya and he's saying that no one has handled the devil like that before. And so again, you can see where he's beginning to sink his hooks into Maya, and Maya says she had a blast killing those people. And then and at this point, like we're probably a good 25, maybe 30 minutes into the episode, and I'm like, holy shit, we're still on the origin here. Like, so, and that's when I realized that, okay, this first episode is gonna mostly, if not entirely, be an origin story. But moving on here, uh, yeah, we move on to this scene where we get a kind of a replay of the fight that happened in the Hawkeye TV show, and that's when Clint is wearing the Ronin suit and he's fighting with Maya, and then he takes off the Ronin mask to reveal that it's him, and Maya's all shocked and surprised, like, oh shit, it's this guy, and then he explains to her that uh, Kingpin ordered the hit on the dad, on Maya's dad, and that Kingpin has been manipulating her, and now she has a battle of conscience, if you will. She has to decide if she wants to see the truth in what Clint is telling her, or if she wants to believe maybe the more comfortable lies that not Daredevil, but that Kingpin has been spewing to her. So what's she gonna go with here? And if you guys have seen the Hawkeye TV show, or if you've seen this episode, then you know what she does. She confronts Kingpin, and Kingpin is battered and bruised and beaten, and she pulls out a gun and she fucking shoots him. Kaplow. And yeah, that's it for old Kingpin. Yep. Or so you thought. Wrong! Kingpin is not dead. Bet you didn't see that coming, did you? I'm gonna do that same thing again when I talk about the end of the episode. Anywho, really quick about Kingpin here. Vincent D'Onofrio, he's fantastic. Like, I don't know who did the casting for that Netflix TV show, but man, did they do a good fucking job. I mean, I really enjoy like the entirety of the cast on that TV show. And I'm not just trying to suck that TV show off. It is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. But man, like it's just phenomenal casting. I mean, so good that you guys remember when Kingpin kills Ben Urich in season 1? I was so taken aback because the Ben Urich actor was phenomenal. He had a lot of really good stuff to do in that season. And I mean, he's kind of a big side character in the Daredevil mythos. So I was really surprised that they killed him. But it was such a good scene, and he was such a good actor for that role. I mean, obviously Vincent D'Onofrio is really good. Charlie Cox is really good. They're all good. Foggy, Karen, obviously Punisher. I mean, they're all just really, really good casting here. But I bring up Vincent D'Onofrio and his performance as Kingpin because I was so excited to see him in Hawkeye, and I was surprised when they brought him in, and I was so happy to see him on screen, and they made him look big and imposing. And admittedly, they kind of did the same thing with Kingpin in the Hawkeye TV show that they did with Daredevil in the She-Hulk TV show, where they made them really cartoony. It's like, yeah, they were just really kind of cartoony versions of themselves, and it's jarring, right? Because it's such a far cry from what we're used to seeing these two do on the Netflix Daredevil series. So, yeah, I didn't really like the finish of the Hawkeye TV show that much, and a lot of it had to do with the Kingpin stuff. Like, how is the kingpin of crime so easily bested? It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And I'm not talking about the bullet to the head. I'm talking about like the fight with uh, Kate Bishop. I'm like, how is this making any sense here? It's not. Yeah. So I don't know. It just. I mean, they made him fucking impervious, like he's the goddamn juggernaut, and then he. Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. Um. Anyway, he's great though. So yeah, we're at the point in the flashback where Maya shoots Kingpin in the head, and that's actually technically would be the end of the flashback sequences. Because at that point we really don't know what Maya does. She just shot the kingpin of crime in the fucking face. So what do you do? Well, she does what any reasonable person with half a functioning brain would do. She got the fuck out of town. And so she grabs a motorcycle, gasses up, and she hits the road. And she's got a pretty nasty wound on her side. She stitches that shit with like some dental floss. I'm sure that's good for the wound. The wound is now minty fresh, and she hits the road. I have a couple of minor nitpicks with this show about travel. Maybe Maya just shouldn't travel like at all, right? She travels with her mom, and then the brakes go out, and kablooey. And here she's on the back of this motorcycle. Somehow, she like dozes off on this motorcycle, and she is about to hit a big rig truck that's in front of her. The big rig sees the motorcycle in his rearview mirror and blows the horn, and that wakes her up and startles her, and she almost swerves and wrecks, and that's the whole deal. First of all, kudos to that driver of the big rig truck, because I mean, yeah, like like that's just it was just an interesting scenario for that to happen. Like, wouldn't it be the other way around? Like, she's in front of the big rig and maybe she's swerving, or like it's in like oncoming traffic and she's about to swerve into the lane of the big truck. I don't. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But that the scene from earlier when she wrecked, or when her mom wrecked, when the brake line was cut. Okay, here's the thing, right? Like I used to actually like work in the car industry, but honestly, even if you never worked in the car industry, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you cut the brake lines on a car like that, okay, it because of like the okay, so it will like depend on like certain makes and models, but like general rule of thumb, you're gonna know pretty fucking soon if your brakes don't work. You know what I mean? Like, so think about it. You hop in your car and you start it up. What's the first thing you do here? You let your foot off the brake. You would very quickly realize something's not right here. So I don't want to say that it's a myth, but it's something that really kind of only works with like super old cars, like the whole cutting the brake lines, and that's the thing that's going to take them out. Like, you really got to not be paying attention to your car to not notice that your brake lines, or that your brakes have been cut. Um, Nowadays, with modern vehicles, if you understand the components of brakes, you can probably do it to greater effect. But man, you almost got to be a damn mechanic and engineer to know how to do that shit. Anywho, it's not important. Just a trope. Just wanted to point it out. Oh boy. Anyways, so yeah. By the way, so she decides to flee back to her hometown in Oklahoma, and so she goes back to her hometown, back to her home crib even, and she breaks in and she spends the night there on the couch, and no one's there. Um, I'm not sure who would be. Maybe the grandmother would be there, but yeah, no one's there at the home, and she is on the run. I mean, as she should be. She's gonna have to figure out a way to clear her name. Now, at this point of the episode, I was starting to get a little bit antsy, because I had spent at this point maybe 35, damn near 40 minutes trying to figure out, okay, thank you guys for giving me the full origin of your take on Echo. But what is the purpose? Like, what is she? What is her goal? Because for all she knows, Kingpin is dead. So are you just gonna hide out? Like, what's your end game here? What is her objective for the duration of this TV show? And again, you really don't get that until the very end. And I have mixed feelings about it, but we'll get there in just a second. So when she wakes up, there's a knock at the door, and it's her cousin Biscuit. I'm assuming that that is not his real name. I don't know what people in Oklahoma are like, but I don't think they name their kids Biscuit. Or maybe they do. I'm not judging. I'm judging a little bit. I mean, but hey, who am I to judge anyone? I mean, Biscuit is a perfectly fine name. Anywho, so her and Biscuit kind of reunite. She's not too psyched to see Biscuit. I ain't mean to do that. Did you guys catch that? I said she's not too excited to see Biscuit. See Biscuit like the horse. God damn, I'm funny. Okay. This is supposed to be a shorty. I gotta do this 4 more times. Okay. All right. So, uh, the only thing of real note here that happens in the scenes with Biscuit is we get the notion that she being Maya Echo, she doesn't want it to be actively known that she's there. And again, that's for obvious reasons. She probably wants to protect her family, and she doesn't want anyone to get wind that she's there because again, she's on the run. Even if the cops are not looking for her as a suspect in the Kingpin shooting, the Kingpin's goons would most certainly be looking for you. Like the Kingpin's reach is fucking astounding. Like I don't know if you guys understand like the reach that Wilson Fisk has, but that shit knows no bounds, knows no limits. Um, and also the other interesting thing that we get here is he says I forget exactly. No, he says it's been 20 years since I've seen you. He says something like that, right? It's been 20 years since you left. Uh, and I'm not the smartest knife in the shed or whatever the saying is, but the show then would have to take place in the year 2027, which again with the snapping happening right with the snapping happening back in Endgame, and we got that 5 year time jump. I suppose that does make sense. I just at this point I'm never really sure what the timeline is with the MCU, but yeah, okay, I guess we're in the year 2027 because when Maya left Oklahoma as a child, um, that was in 2007, and now we're in the year 2027. So, just an interesting note there. She goes to the local skating rink, and yeah, I mean it's a scene. Like she just goes there to reunite with another old childhood friend or family member, something of the sort. And they bring in a mortician, an undertaker, to stitch up Maya. And then her and I didn't catch the guy's name, the guy who ran the skating rink. I didn't write his name down, but they go up to the top of a water tower or something of the sort, and they discuss uh, Bonnie, Bonnie being Maya's cousin, the one who she was hanging out with at the beginning of the episode. This episode really drives home that when those two were kids, they had a really really strong bond, and as time goes on, they maybe drifted apart a little bit. But the guy who runs the skating rink says to Maya that Bonnie would be really really heartbroken if she found out that you were back in town and you didn't speak to her. And Maya does the thing where she's like the cold hearted badass, where her feelings aren't my problem. Um, I'm a little confused here, if I'm being honest, about like the relationship between Bonnie and Maya. Um, like I get that they were like best friends when they were kids, and they called each other sister. Like that's just how close they were. But in reality, they were just cousins. So they tell us that at the very beginning of the episode. But man, it just feels like there's some fucking romantic tension going on there, and it's weird. It is weird. Oklahoma isn't known for cousin fucking, I don't think. Homies out there in Oklahoma, let me know if you guys regularly fuck your cousins or not. I don't think you do, by the way. I think you guys are non cousin fucking variety. But I don't know, man. There was just some weird, yeah, tensions that I was picking up there, and maybe it's like the use of dialogue that felt a bit. I don't want to say tropey, but that's kind of the best way I can think to describe it. Where it's like we've seen this kind of tension play out in other TV shows or other movies, and it's always done for like the romantic interest. Oh man, she'd be really upset, if you didn't speak to her when you're back in town, and so we kind of seen this thing before, but you put it together with all the other moments with Bonnie and all the other mentions of Bonnie and Maya, and it just feels really, really romantic. It has a kind of a weird will they won't they vibe to it, and hopefully for like episode 2 they can just kind of wash that taste away, because that's not doing it for me. And then at the very end of the episode here, up here on this water tower, I think this is when we get her motive, her game plan here. She says something like, they had a kingpin, now it's time for a queen. And from what I can understand, she's alluding to the fact that she wants to take over Kingpin's empire, which that is a fucking lofty goal. And like I said before, I have mixed feelings about this conclusion. Because on one hand, I like it, right? I like when you let anti-heroes have a bit of that villain flair to them. Like she kills people. She has this lofty goal that has a little bit of a selfish twinge to it. I like that. Okay, she's not a straight up hero. All right, Maya starts off as a villain in the comic books. It's not until the end of that run where she defects. So I don't have a problem with that. I think the issue I have with it is nothing about her said that she had that kind of vast ambition until then, right? So again, for most of this episode, we're learning about who Maya is, her childhood, how she lost her leg, her struggles, growing up and losing both of her parents at different times. And, so we get that, and then we get caught up with the Hawkeye Ronin stuff. And then, she's on the run. So it didn't really gel together that she would just want to be the queen pin of sorts, that she would want to take over Wilson Fisk empire. Like, I don't know, that just didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, you were, for all intents and purposes, kind of scared shitless after you shot Kingpin, as you should have been. She's smart enough to know to get the fuck out of town and lay low because you don't want to attract any kind of attention. But yeah, so if that's the angle they're going, then I think they should have maybe set it up a little bit cleaner, so it would be less of a shock and more understandable and more within reason for her character to want to achieve that goal. But again, they got 4 more episodes to sell that to me, so it's not like they have a lack of time. And then, of course, there is one more scene at the very end of this episode, and we pan over to a hospital bed. And you guys will never fucking believe this. The Kingpin is alive. Holy shit, who saw it coming? And I'm just teasing. I know then this was not meant to be like this huge reveal. We all knew the Kingpin was alive. All right, you're not gonna bring in Vinny D. That's what I call Vincent D'Onofrio. You're not gonna bring in Vinny D and then just have him make a glorified cameo in Hawkeye and then a glorified cameo in Echo and kill him off. Come on, come on. Fuck you thought this was. So yeah, Kingpin is obviously still alive. Um, and if I'm being honest, I probably just would have cut this scene altogether. You know, because while I don't think we're gonna see Daredevil again, I do think we're gonna see Kingpin again. And so why not just have Kingpin show up? Just have him because, like, listen, we all knew he survived, and I think that it would just add it more to like a cool shock factor to see him back in a different episode versus seeing him in the hospital bed at the end of this episode. You know, um, yeah. So that's going to be a an interesting turn of events there to see what happens with that. Um, so the reviews for both critics and fans alike have been all over the place. I've seen everything from I loved it to it's okay to man, it's garbage. So where I'm sitting at right now, as of this first episode, I give it an 8.3. I thought this first episode was really good. Thought it was really fast paced. I thought it had some great action in it. It did a really great job filling in audiences on the origin of Maya in this version in the MCU. I thought that Alekwa Cox, the lead who plays Maya, I think she does a great job. I think she has a really imposing build. I think she's very believable, and I mean, she just does a really great job, kind of carrying this role of like this kind of stoic badass type persona. Um, Time will tell if the script will hold up and allow her to continue to do well in this role. We will see. Now, I do wonder, will the quality of the show dip? I don't know. But I'll find out again soon in like less than 24 hours. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I really think that this first episode does a lot of things good for me. Obviously, I mean, and listen, like, I think I would have given this show a similar score had it not had, I mean, probably the exact same score, for being honest, had it not had the Daredevil scene in it. Don't get me wrong, I'm always grateful to see Daredevil pop up. I mean, you guys got Charlie Cox on the payroll, might as well fucking use him, you know? And again, I thought that his fight scene was really well done, and I think that people who were shitting on it were just being extremely overcritical. Like yeah, I don't see where the hate is coming from. Um, yeah, Maya, don't fuck your cousin. That shit is weird and illegal. Don't do it. I can't be the only one getting that vibe. That shit was just crazy. Anywho, yeah, but overall, man, I really dug this episode, and it's got me looking forward to seeing what happens next. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this. Like I said, I'll be back again, not next week, but tomorrow, to review, or to watch and review episode 2, and then after I review episode 5, which should be recorded and released on Sunday, the following Monday, I will review the first appearance of Echo. That was created by Joe Quesada and David Mack. David Mack? David Mack, yeah. I actually met David Mack at Dragon Con. I met him a few times actually. He's a really, really cool guy. Really nice guy. Like out of all the comic book creators that I've met, he is among the best. Like just genuine, down to earth, cool guy, and his artwork is amazing. So, but ironically, Joe Quesada is the artist for the Echo story, and David Mack is the writer. So, Just interesting, right? He also did a lot of artwork for the Jessica Jones TV show. I mean, his art is everywhere. Like it's all over the place in the Netflix verse. Obviously, it's all over Marvel Comics. Uh, Anyways, yeah. So that'd be a really fun story to review here. First comic book story of 2024 that I'm reviewing. So yeah, thank you guys for sticking around for this. Hopefully, you guys had a good time here. If nothing else, I had a good time. But in all seriousness, I hope you guys had a good time here. Thank you guys for listening again. Y'all are fucking amazing. Uh, if you haven't seen Echo, definitely check it out. By the way, full spoilers. I didn't say that at the beginning of this episode, so if you haven't figured it out by now, this episode contains spoilers. I'll see you guys again soon. But until next time, my name is Superhero Homie Q, signing off.